Hi there, my name's Richard and I have a confession. I don't actually like a big chunk of TV, and I mean it's a really big chunk. Whew, right, now that's off my chest, I can carry on explaining exactly what I mean. Way back at the dawn of time, or as it's also known, the 1990s, I found myself having fun with a camera on my shoulder. However, one thing led to another and I've been in front of the camera, in the edit suite, and in just about every other creative role that you can think of in television. I've spent 2 decades making film and TV, but I still don't know what I want to do for a living. And that's despite the fact that I'm 40 odd and apparently you're supposed to know by now. Still, it's never too late to grow up, eh? So, in an effort to try and work out what I should be doing, where I should be doing it, and with whom, I decided to simply follow my nose for a good story, so I could go back behind the lens and self-shoot some of my own documentaries. That's true stories then. True stories for grown-ups who are perhaps growing a little bit tired of the vast amounts of fabricated reality that seems to be washing up on the shores of TV land. Stories like iTunes, which has taken me a few years to get together, to be honest, because it's tracked the real life arc of this man, who's from one of the roughest neighbourhoods in Manchester, and he's got the undoubted honour of being the world's first ever white rapper. Now, his story is quite incredible, and believe me, it's as gritty as anything to be found in any of the US ghettos, except this MC was born and raised in a place called Moss Side. An environment which shaped his artistic response, but refused to let him go on to greater things. But he's not giving up, and a tale that starts in his council house matures and grows quite nicely as impossible dreams start to come true. Then there's -40 in Mongolia, where I became involved in an excursion to an incredibly hostile, yet quite beautiful land to document the trials and travails of a small bunch of friends as they battled to run a marathon at -40 degrees on a frozen up riverbed. In turn, this led me to spending time with some very inspiring people indeed, like this young man here who challenged himself to running 401 consecutive daily marathons in order to raise awareness of some very important issues. And, like a lot of young men who grew up in the 70s and 80s, I found myself figuratively bombarded with stories about World War II. I'd also spent a few years chatting to my ageing grandfather about his experiences, and now, this summer, I find myself returning to Juno Beach in Normandy with this man here. David's story reads like the stuff of legend, and he's now anticipating the very trip we're going on like a schoolboy, albeit a 93-year-old schoolboy, not least because we're putting him back on the beach in a truck the same as the one that he drove off the landing craft at 6 a.m. on the 6th of June 1944. It'll soon be the 75th anniversary of the landings, but with 0.3% of British D-Day veterans surviving, time is undoubtedly of the essence. And finally, seeing as I spent almost a decade making TV programmes which glamorised certain social scenes in real life, I finish off my first series of 4 documentaries with a story called Glamorize, which asks some serious questions about the lengths that young women are prepared to go to in their quest for fame and fortune. Questions like, are they losing more than simply their inhibitions in order to try and get on the reality ladder in a society that is fast becoming saturated by competitions that appear to make false promises to impressionable young minds? If you are, like myself, partial to a good, honest story, told with an impartial and informed narrative, then you're in exactly the right place to go on some journeys following some genuinely unordinary stories. And you don't even have to leave your armchair, you lucky, lucky people.